Diabetes Connections is brought to you by Inhaled Insulin, Glucose Management in the Moment, by Omnipod, Simplify Life with Omnipod 5, by Dexcom, Manage Diabetes confidently and achieve real results with Dexcom G7, the powerfully simple CGM, and by Edgepark, simplify your diabetes journey with Edgepark.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, going to college with type 1 is a big adjustment for the student and the family. Going to college as a student athlete with type 1 is on another level. We're going to talk to a Syracuse University rower about his schedule, how he manages, and how he and his parents worked ahead of time to make their transition as smooth as possible. This podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider. Welcome to another week of the show. Always so glad to have you here. You know we aim to educate and inspire with a focus on people who use insulin. Quick hello to new people joining us after Mom's Night Out Frisco. More to come on that. And we have the next Mom's Night Out happening in Providence, Rhode Island in about a week and a half. That's on October 27th and 28th. And then we are back in Charlotte in February. I have so much fun at these events. They're very stressful. I can't believe I'm an event planner now, but I'm so glad I decided to do this. All right. A while back, I mentioned on one of the In the News episodes that Dexcom U is back. If you're not familiar, NIL refers to the rights of college athletes to control and profit from their name, image, and likeness. The NCAA restricted this, but there was a policy change about 2 years ago now. I'm going to link that up in the show notes if you'd like to learn more. So Dexcom started this in 2022, and this year their roster features 20 college athletes representing men and women across various sports like cheerleading, track and field, football, lacrosse, and baseball, and rowing. By the way, Dexcom referred me to a survey they did that showed 48% of adults with type 1 believe that learning about a professional athlete or celebrity with type 1 would be beneficial for a newly diagnosed patient. College students aren't exactly pro athletes or celebrities. As you'll hear in the interview, I almost think this is better because this is something, I say it's more attainable. I think you know what I'm talking about. We'll talk about that in the Facebook group. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. But today, you're going to hear from Tristan Wakefield, who is on the men's rowing team at Syracuse University, my alma mater. He was diagnosed with type 1 when he was 7 years old. I loved talking to Tristan. He was really open, and I got a little emotional when he talked about his mom and how helpful she has been. And that's next. How many times have you miscalculated timing of a mealtime insulin dose? This happens a lot, right? You dose after you order, and then the restaurant gets busy, your meal takes longer than expected, or you just forget and you bolus too late, and you have to deal with the high blood sugars. If that happens to you, it might be time to think about Afrezza inhaled insulin. Afrezza uses a breath-powered inhaler to quickly deliver insulin powder into the lungs and bloodstream. It's fast in, fast out. In fact, with Afrezza, insulin is released into the bloodstream in less than 1 minute and may start to lower blood sugar in about 12 minutes. Ask your doctor if Afrezza is right for you. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Afrezza logo. Afrezza can cause serious side effects, including sudden lung problems and low potassium, and is not for patients with chronic lung disease such as asthma or COPD, or for patients allergic to insulin. Tell your doctor if you ever smoked, have ever had kidney or liver problems, a history of lung cancer, or if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. Most common side effects are low blood sugar, cough, and sore throat. Severe low blood sugar can be fatal. Do not replace long-acting insulin with Afrezza. Afrezza is not for use to treat diabetic ketoacidosis. Please see full prescribing information, including boxed warning, medication guide, and instructions for use on afrezza.com/safety. Tristan, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me today. I appreciate you spending some time.
Thanks for having me on the podcast.
I can't imagine how busy your schedule is. Do you mind just taking a minute and talking? I mean, we're going to talk about diabetes. We're going to talk about training, all that stuff. But what is your schedule day to day like?
It's a little bit messy. I'm very lucky with my schedule this semester. Almost all of my classes are 2 days a week, and then I have one class on Friday. So I got really lucky with my scheduling this year. But for practices, Tuesday, Thursday mornings, and Saturday mornings, and then Monday through Friday afternoons. So a little bit, it's just kind of scattered a little bit.
Are you able to do other activities? I mean, besides school and practice, are you able to kind of do anything else at Syracuse?
Yes, so I am involved in SAC, which is Student Athletic Advisory Committee, which we do a wide variety of stuff for the athletic department, but I'm in the culture committee, which is about building relationships within the different teams at SU.
All right. Well, I got way ahead of myself already asking about your schedule. Let's back up and talk about type 1 first. When were you diagnosed?
I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 7, so pretty young age. My mother was a nurse, so she had a little bit of experience knowing what was happening with me before going to the doctor and figuring out my glucose levels were high and that I had diabetes. It was definitely life-changing. I was still pretty young, so now I look back on it and it doesn't seem like it was as much of a change in my lifestyle because I was still pretty young, but it obviously did change.
Yeah. Do you remember anything specific from that time?
There's a pretty good story my mom tells about my diagnosis. I live about an hour away from Iowa City, which was the hospital I had to go to meet with my endocrinologist about my diabetes. The first thing I remember was that morning going to the park and my mom letting me run around and having my last meal of muffins before it all changed. I got to play on the playground and just have a good time. And you don't know how much it changes, I guess, until it happens.
Yeah. But you don't remember anything specific do you remember eating those muffins? Do you remember being in the hospital?
I remember being in the hospital. It seems like it's so short now, but I remember being in the hospital at my initial diagnosis and learning how to inject a syringe and all the little things that goes along with being newly diagnosed, everything they have to teach you. But I don't remember the big details, but one of them is definitely the visualization. So the syringe injection and stuff like that.
Were you already really into sports at that time?
I was. So at the time, I believe I was doing soccer, baseball, and flag football. I was actually had a flag football game the weekend after I was diagnosed. And it was a really scary situation because I hadn't really gone to any of my sports yet. I hadn't gone back into doing the normal schedule that I had. But I wanted to play in the game and my mother wanted me to play as well. But it was obviously very scary for her. Me, I didn't know as much going into it at the time of what the whole situation was like. But my mother wanted to show me that I could do whatever I wanted with my diabetes.
Yeah.
So went to the game, played, and all was well in the end. But she didn't tell me how scared she was of me playing in the game until afterwards.
I've been there. Yeah. When did you get into rowing?
So I got into rowing in high school. I rowed for a club called Y Quad Cities, which we row on the Mississippi River between Iowa and Illinois. It was just something I picked up along the way, and I just fell in love with it and kept rolling with it. And here we are.
Okay. What I know of rowing is that I go to the gym occasionally and there's a rowing machine and it's really exhausting. I don't think most of us are that familiar. Sometimes you see in the movies, it's one guy in Boston. For some reason, it's always Boston, right? And they're rowing.
Of course.
So what is rowing as a sport really like? It just seems incredibly athletic. Can you talk a little bit? This is a really dumb question, but like the positions are there? I know there's different places in the boat. Oh my gosh, Tristan, I'm so sorry.
Oh, you're okay. You are fine. Obviously, most people have seen a erg or rowing machine at the gym, and that's generally how people start out. And that is a part of the sport. We mainly use the ergs and rowing machines during the winter for fitness, a little bit throughout the year to spread it out. But it's mainly giving you a baseline of your fitness and how fast you can go. While on the water, it's a little bit harder to tell. What it's called splits is how you manage how fast you're going. But it's a little bit harder to tell how fast you're going on the water and to maintain that level of training throughout the year.
I imagine that I mean, every sport is tough. I mean, my son played basketball and baseball and wrestled, and every sport with type 1 diabetes is its own challenge. What's tough about rowing?
Not only there's the mental and then there's the physical aspect of rowing. The mental aspect is showing up, and obviously, like most sports, you have to wake up early for morning practices, and you have to, on the rowing machine, is you look at a screen and you stare at a number for, I don't know, 60, 80 minutes for some workouts, or the harder ones, 40 minutes, and you just stare at that number trying to hit a goal target for that set amount of time. But when we do races, it's like track where it's a set amount of distance, or any running race where you row 2,000 meters and you see whoever crosses the finish line first.
I know these kinds of things are different for everybody, so I don't want to feel like you're speaking for anybody but yourself. How do you fuel? How do you eat for these kinds of things?
I eat quite a bit. So before practices, I make sure I have, if my blood sugar is low or level, I'll have a little bit of something before getting in the boat, and then take a snack with me just in case I get hungry, because some of those practices are pretty long, an hour and a half or 2 hours, depending on how long we're on the water. Throughout the day, though, it's mainly making sure you get your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And even with classes, you just have to make sure you're eating at the right times. Otherwise, you're just not going to have the energy for practice to perform.
We're talking about Dexcom U and the program with that company. So talk to me, if you could, about how you use Dexcom in your sport. I mean, are you able to look at it while you're rowing? Is it something that has changed the way you do things in the boat? For many of you, as you listen, this is going to sound like a weird question. Why do you use the insulin pump that you've got on right now? There's a really good chance you went on that pump 15 or 20 years ago because it's what your doctor had back then, and you've never really thought about changing. Well, that was us until Benny's pump company went out of business, and I was amazed how much things had changed when we looked for a new one. I'm telling you, it is time to take advantage of what's new. If you need a sign to switch, this is it. Omnipod 5, the tubeless automated insulin delivery system, is here, and it's available through the pharmacy, which means you can try it today, even if your tubed pump is under warranty. Fill out the quick online form and see if you're eligible for a free trial. Go to diabetes-connections.com, click on the Omnipod logo. For full safety risk information and free trial terms and conditions, go to omnipod.com/diabetesconnections.
So my Dexcom is extremely helpful with practice and schedules. So going into practice, my athletic training staff has the Follow app, so they can see my blood sugars going into practice while I'm out on the water. And I bring my fanny pack with my snacks and my phone, so they're just able to see my blood sugars and if I need to treat throughout practice.
Yeah. So you use a Dexcom, obviously, but you don't use an insulin pump. You are on multiple daily injections. But you said you don't use pens. Why do you use syringes? I'm so nosy. I'm sorry. You don't have to answer that.
I've just always used syringes. It's just something I've always used, and I feel more comfortable. I did use a pen for a little bit, but I just feel more comfortable using syringes because that's what I've always used.
Yeah. Hey, listen, I'm certainly not judging. It's just surprising sometimes, right? It's like so old school.
Yeah.
No, hey, obviously it's working really well for you.
Yes. Yeah.
I have a few more questions for you, but you mentioned your trainer. Talk to me a little bit about sharing your diabetes information with other people, because I know sometimes, especially when kids are trying to determine if they'll play sports in college, they're trying to navigate how and when to share that they have type 1. So it sounds like that's not an issue for you. Was it ever one?
While in college, I have been very lucky. My coaching staff and training staff are absolutely amazing with me and my diabetes. They're very accommodating, where if obviously we have certain levels that I have to be at to practice, but they're very accommodating. They can modify the workouts to me if I need to do less or move practice later, and I can just use the rowing machine on my own if my blood sugars aren't at the right level to practice at that time. The main thing that I wanted to do going in was 100% honesty with your coach and your training staff, because my coaches and training staff have been amazing and very accommodating, and it'll giving me the opportunity to be a collegiate athlete with diabetes.
I know the Syracuse University staff has experience with athletes, very high level athletes with type 1. Was that a question for you, though, when you were in high school and considering doing college athletics? It sounds like you always were open and honest about it, but I can understand why some students would be really nervous because they don't know, right? They don't know what the coaches are going to say. How did you and your parents decide to just kind of to tell people?
I'm very open about my diabetes. So if someone asks me about it on the street, I will completely openly have a conversation about it. And it's honestly, wearing my Dexcom, it's a great way to meet other diabetics because you see someone wearing it around and you can go up and have a conversation with them, or just a great way to meet.
Yeah.
I've met a couple other diabetics on campus just wearing my Dexcom around.
Dexcom U, this is the second year of this program, which takes advantage of, the NIL, I don't know what you'd call that, NIL ruling or, regulations. What was it like to be part of it? Did you apply? Did they pick you? It just seems like a really interesting and unique experience.
It's a really neat program and opportunity. So I started out by reaching out to I believe the Dexcom website had a email to reach out to, and reached out to them, and there was a whole application and interview process where I gave them information about me, why I wanted to be a part of the program, and they ended up accepting me, and I'm really thankful for that. And I'm able to share my story on platforms like yours.
Yeah, it's really cool because I remember when my son was little, right? And we would look up and see, oh, there's these celebrities living with type 1. Like, that's really cool. There's a professional athlete, or there's Nick Jonas. But my son, who's a very nice kid, but he's not going to play in the NFL. But he always wanted to do sports and be active. And it was funny. I remember thinking at the time, like, I kind of wish there was somebody more on a realistic level. And it's really great to see a lot of college athletes like yourself who, I mean, listen, I my ridiculous questions about rowing earlier, right? I mean, these are not, how to say this? I mean, you know what I'm getting at, right?
Yes.
It seems like the Dexcom U program is giving kids that can be role models in a very attainable way. I mean, this is something that people can really do. Is part of being into this program for you, is it kind of fun to think about being a role model for younger kids like that?
Obviously, the Dexcom U program gives me the opportunity to inspire young athletes that want to do collegiate athletics, but I really think it just gives the opportunity for any young diabetic to believe that they can do whatever they want. And I just love the idea of that. And obviously, I wish something like this existed when I was younger. And I remember going online and even looking up and seeing, oh, there are a couple Olympians and whatnot with diabetes, but there wasn't a program like this where you could actually hear their stories and how they got to where they are now. And I think that's what's so amazing about this Dexcom U program.
As a mom of a kid who played a lot of sports, I am often asked, like, well, how did you manage football? Or, how did you handle basketball or baseball or wrestling? What did you do as a mom? And the hardest part for us as parents is to kind of do nothing and let you all figure it out and play, figure out when to come out of games for highs and lows and things like that. Do you mind if I ask you a little bit about your parents? Like, did your mom ever run out to the boat and say, don't forget your snacks? Can you talk about how your parents set you up for success?
Oh, my mother was amazing in getting me to where I am now. She's probably the only reason that I have made it through certain steps of the process along the way. She's just been amazing. And about the examples I think of, so in high school, I did 3 sports. I did basketball, soccer, and rowing. And I can think of a couple times where she was able to see my Dexcom, and I'd come back to the boathouse and she'd be on the dock with the Gatorade, ready to hand it to me, or just coming behind the bench and handing me a Gatorade and a couple of fruit snacks and whatnot during games. And I just can always think of our races. She's just always been there to help me manage my diabetes, and even just throughout the nights, making sure that I'm able to get sleep on those next days of racing. The Dexcom has been really helpful for her and me getting rest.
How was the transition? I mean, you're a sophomore, but for somebody who sounds like, 3-sport athlete in high school, that transition to college, which is something I'm going through now with my son, what was that like for you and your mom? Did you have conversations about following, alerting her? changing how you're going to manage your diabetes?
I think the biggest worry was if I would wake up in the middle of the night to my lows. And I think the Dexcom definitely helped alert me and wake me up. And it definitely, even just last night, woke me up, 4 a.m. to 60 glucose level slightly going down. And I was able to treat and went to bed 20 minutes later as my blood sugar was going up, or as my glucose level was going up. I'm very thankful for that. And I think my mother is definitely comforted by the idea of my Dexcom and her being able to see my blood sugars through the Follow app.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I just did a webinar last night about college where I was the parent and then there were some experts and educators. And it's such a individual process to see how we all make this transition. So I know I'm getting off the topic here, but I just wanted to take advantage of having you here as a recent college student. Any advice from your perspective as the student, right? Any advice for parents who have high school kids or are looking, whether their child is going to college or not, they're looking at a child who's a young adult now and is looking to leave home. What did you and your mom do that worked in terms of helping you be more independent, but also helping her transition in a way that worked?
Without speaking for my mother and I had a few conversations that were necessary and needed to happen about not only about her stepping back a little bit, but me taking responsibility more so for if my blood sugar goes high or low, taking it more personal and making sure that, I need to do this to make sure that I'm better set up for practice, or going to bed, making sure I don't forget to check my glucose level before going to bed. Just little things that while you're living in the household, you don't have to worry about as much. But when you're on your own, it's the little responsibilities, and you kind of just have to pick up that because it's a two-way street, obviously. And as obviously your parents give away a little bit of freedom, you have to take responsibility for the parts that they give you. And I think over my senior year of high school, maybe, and over the summer, we started to take some steps and did little things along the way. Like I started to manage my diabetes more nights throughout the week. And I had a few conversations with my roommate before coming to school, making sure that I was okay. And when I got to school, we had a couple chats about how to manage my diabetes. And he knows how to, if I'm in trouble, he knows how to help me out, as well as the rest of my teammates now throughout my freshman year. As we started to get closer together, I was able to help educate them as well.
That's really great. What do you love about rowing?
I love my team. The guys are amazing. The coaches are amazing. And going out on the water and seeing the beautiful sunrises in the morning and being out there and on the water and seeing a different part of nature, it's just gorgeous and it's just beautiful out there. And I just love that part of it. And then there's also the part where all of the guys in your boat are working together and putting every little bit of energy that you have into making this boat move. It's definitely an amazing environment to be a part of.
That's so cool to hear. But Tristan, I've been there in Syracuse. I've seen those sunrises. It's freezing. Where do you guys, what lake are you on? Are you on Onondaga?
Well, Lake Onondaga, yes. But it is cold a little bit, but you get used to the cold until it gets to November. And then by that point, it's just unrollable. So we get on the rowing machines. We obviously are wearing our long sleeves and whatnot pants, but it's still enjoyable. And you're out there with all of your teammates with the same goal of making these boats move fast.
I love it. Tristan, thank you so much for joining me. I guess I should wrap this up. God, I'm still back on Lake Onondaga and freezing, although it's only September.
It is gorgeous right now.
I'm sure it's beautiful.
It's 60s, a little bit of wind is perfect, and it's beautiful right now. It's beautiful.
Tristan, thank you so much for spending so much time with me. I really hope you stay warm. Now I'm worried because I remember how cold it is in Syracuse, but I'm sure you will. And all the best. And I'd love for you to come back if you would. I mean, it's a great program. And I'm sure you're going to hear from a lot of people that you've inspired, but thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was great speaking to you and speaking to a Syracuse alum, of course. It was amazing speaking to you, and yeah, all the best.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
I taped this interview with Tristan a couple of weeks ago, and I am telling you, it is just getting colder up there. I am amazed at how great these kids do. I mean, when I was at college, we didn't care. It snowed every day in Syracuse from my birthday, which is mid-October, to the first day of winter break. I didn't even realize that I was in for almost 10 years of that because I stayed in upstate New York after college. So yeah, it's cold on the lake up there. I'm going to link up more information about Dexcom U in the show notes, that NIL policy, if you're not familiar and you'd like to learn more. If you can't find the show notes at the podcast player where you are listening, you can always go to each episode's homepage at diabetes-connections.com. Up next, I want to talk about wins and fails for the week. I've been talking about integration for years, and it's been wonderful to see it all happening. Dexcom G6 is part of Tandem Diabetes Control IQ system and part of the Omnipod 5 system. My son has been using Control IQ for more than 3 years now, and these systems really are amazing. Everybody sleeps better. The system has his back when he doesn't get the meal bolus exactly right. And as a mom, I will never stop worrying, but I do worry a lot less. And honestly, we all just think about diabetes less, which is amazing. Learn more, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. Every couple of weeks, I like to talk about wins and fails. My win for this week is that Ryan Reed is back behind the wheel. It has been 5 years since Ryan drove in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. He raced this past weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway in the number 66 Tandem Diabetes Care Chevy. I may have to dig out some old photos because I gotta say it was 2012, I think, when he first moved here. He moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. NASCAR is here and there's a lot of racing here. He worked with JDRF and he used to go to events, and Benny met him. And I have pictures of little teeny Benny with Ryan. So I may have to pull some of those out. But congratulations to him. Really excited. I know he's excited to be back, and he's already agreed to come back on the podcast. So I will be talking to him soon. My fail for this week is Oprah Winfrey and some other people talking about Ozempic as taking the easy way out in terms of weight loss. Now, this had big financial ramifications. The Weight Watchers stock, I think, went down 10, maybe 15%, because Weight Watchers is buying these smaller companies like these telehealth subscription services that prescribe Ozempic and other drugs for weight loss. And I know this is a podcast for people who use insulin. This isn't necessarily a show about Wegovy and the weight loss drugs, but I'm hearing this a lot. I actually wrote into a podcast that I listen to all the time. It has nothing to do with diabetes. And the host said that he was doing intermittent fasting. This is what he said. He wasn't cheating by using Ozempic or Wegovy. He was doing intermittent fasting. So, of course, I had to send him a note and set him straight. I just didn't think that was fair at all. There's just so much ignorance around this issue. And part of my fail here, too, is that, as we all know, there is a shortage of these drugs. And so you see all these ads on social media that are for compounded versions. And if you're not sure if they're compounded, if they're saying, give me a call and a doctor will prescribe this for you and you can have it tomorrow for $99 for 3 months worth of Ozempic, that's not the branded Ozempic, and there is no generic yet. And the FDA had to issue a warning about these compounds. There's already warnings in place for people who have type 1 and take these medications. It can be incredibly beneficial. And I'll refer you back to the episode I did with Dr. Edelman earlier this year. I'll link up more information. But just again, to emphasize that whatever kind of diabetes you have, please be careful about these compounded versions. I'm seeing them all over my social media, and not just diabetes social media, but in my Charlotte, North Carolina stuff, because so many are popping up here. So I'm sure it's the same where you live too. And that is my fail for this week. Looking ahead, there is a newscast this Friday. In the News will be dropping in just a couple of days. And then next week's show should be all about tandem diabetes. If the schedule holds, I'm chatting with them, and I'm excited to bring them your questions. It's been a while. Thank you, as always, to my editor, John Buchanan from Audio Editing Solutions. Thank you so much for listening. I'm Stacey Sims. I'll see you back here soon. Until then, be kind to yourself.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.
If you're managing life with diabetes, Edgepark is here to support you on your health journey. Discover convenience and peace of mind with Edgepark, your trusted supplier in diabetes management supplies. Edgepark has a wide variety of pump and CGM solutions from top brands to fit your unique needs. Plus, Edgepark works with most insurance companies and handles the paperwork to navigate insurance complexities for you and make the ordering process as seamless as possible. You work hard to manage your diabetes. Let Edgepark take care of the rest. Go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Edgepark logo.